Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And you could see this a huge smile on my face, and that's because I've been talking about pumpkins um, with the wonderful Bowlerhat farmer who is Mark Byford. Hello.
And a good evening to you. How are we all?
Very, very well. And I follow your work. I'm constantly excited and inspired by it. And I'm, for that reason, very happy that you're here. And for some, it might seem like an unusual conversation to be having on a channel that is primarily about spiritual matters. And yet, there is a very important spiritual aspect to food that seems to escape many people. And I think that whether you're doing it consciously or whether you're doing it unconsciously, you certainly have an ethos that I would consider to be spiritual. So I guess maybe it might be good to ask you what led you into farming?
Okay, so from my side, at 5 years old, my grandfather was a cowman, a dairyman, and at 5 years old, I got chucked into a baptism of fire. So I was put on the back of a cow, and Granddad said, "You know where the picnic field is?" I said, "Yes, Granddad." He said, "Okay." He said, "I need you to take Daisy, which was the matriarch cow, down to the picnic field." And I said, "Okay, Granddad," didn't question it. And he put me on the cow's shoulders and smacked the cow's bum. And off the cow trotted with 500 other cows following it. and I, and the cow quietly, and all the others stood behind and walked carefully. And she walked right round the field and came back round to the gate. By then, everyone else was in. She pushed the gate shut. I jumped the gate and went to school and didn't think no more of it, Anna. And I think the problem is that these days, we're not in touch with anything at all, apart from mobile phones. And, whether that's, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, I think we've become completely detached from everything, especially food and where it comes from. So for me, yeah, very young age, I was brought up, in and around the farm and the farms locally, always growing something with Granddad. I was blessed to have him for the first 16 years of my life. So he taught me literally everything I know. It was all down to that passion, desire, the emphasis from him that you need to know this stuff. You need to know how to grow food. You learn how to grow food, you can look after yourself, but you can also look after other people. So, yeah, I think so in the background somewhere, as much as I've done loads of different things in my life, from running a recycle company to running the charity for 8 years where we did food parcels and things, somewhere in it has always been this desire for food and food and farming. So I think once I had the chance to physically get back to the land 10 years ago, I was like, let's go.
And that's such a beautiful story because within it is the link that is in your heart to nature and to the earth and the animals in it. And I
Yeah.
think that that's, you're so right when you say that on the whole, our society has become very disconnected from that. It is, it is so true, the disconnection from food, disconnection from feeling. And that's, my work as a therapist is to help people reconnect with feeling. But I have this conversation with clients again and again where I am encouraging them to start looking after themselves by getting into the kitchen. And, it actually does begin with food because that is an act of nourishing and self-love
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we need to engage with. So I think that story has so much in it. And you mentioned,
Anna, let me tell you. Let me tell you another part to this story. So I'd been married for about 18 years, and my wife and I decided that the marriage was done and we were going to separate. And I was always the dad who took really no part in bringing the children up, apart from running them about. And I have to be honest and say that I never stepped foot in the kitchen for 18 years. I didn't ever get involved in the household running. I just went to work and did an excessive amount of hours to pay for the family and the four kids which we had, which wanted to be here, there, and everywhere. And when we divorced, the children decided they wanted to come and live with dad. And the younger two and the older two by that point were leaving home. And it was interesting because I'd got no experience in looking after the children, that's for sure, and that soon came to light. And the hours which I worked went from 18, 20 hours a day down to about 5 hours, which worked in between the school gate. And I was like, oh my God, and it wasn't many months, because I'd left everything to the wife and that, and it wasn't many months before I kind of ended up with not a lot of money and food. And just prior to Christmas, I'd sat down and sort of done the maths and thought, shit, I haven't really got enough money for all of this. And I'm either going to have to make a decision to buy the presents or I buy the Christmas dinner, as to speak. And I thought, well, the kids were young enough where they're going to remember if Santa doesn't come, but they're probably not going to really remember if they had beans on toast on Christmas Day. So I bought the presents, and a friend of mine visited me just prior to Christmas Eve on the 23rd, and said to me, "Oh, what we're going to have to eat?" And I said, "I'll be honest, mate, so I've got nothing in the house, so I'm really worried about Christmas Day." And I'd phoned my sisters, and they were away on holiday. I'd phoned my mum and dad, they were going away, and I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with the kids?" It's like, we're going to end up at the church for Christmas Day or something, And on Christmas Eve morning, there was a knock at the door, early doors, and went out, and we lived in the middle of nowhere, and I went to the door and there was nobody there, flicked the outside light on to kind of step out, and there was a box outside the door full of vegetables, full of groceries, with a turkey on top and a Christmas card. And the Christmas card simply said, "Know that you're loved and that somebody cares, and when the time is right, pay it forward." And a copy of the DVD, Pay It Forward, was in the box too. Now, I always thought to myself, it must have been my friend Gary Spencer. It must have been him. It must have been him. And some months went past, about 6, 7 months went past, and he always denied it. And as we approached the next Christmas, he said to me, I said to him, "I know you dropped that food box off." He said, "I was just the delivery boy." He said, "It doesn't matter where it came from. I was just the delivery boy." He said, "And all I want you to remember is, at some point, you have to make this right and pay it forward to somebody else in the same position. You just have to make me one more promise that you never end up in that position again." I said, "Well, that's the deal." So that Christmas, I set about on Facebook about the 18th of December and I told my story. And I said, just imagine if we could get up Christmas morning between collectively all of us, and we'd raised enough food for 5 people. 5 families to have a good Christmas rather than, no food in the house. And but within 24 hours, we'd got a phone call from a friend who worked at Sainsbury's at the time, and he said, "Would you like to come and stand in the foyer and tell your story to the public and collect food?" And within 24 hours of that, we were in there, we were collecting food, and by Christmas Eve, we collected enough food for 50 families. And I had a friend who worked for social services, and she said, "Look, I can't give you any details, but I could come and collect it." And she delivered it out to families, and we had a few people apply to us. The next year we did 1,000. The next year we did 5,000. The next year 10,000. And then we handed it over to Food Bank. And that was all as a result of me just being brave enough to tell a friend I hadn't got any food in the house. And I think, unfortunately, until someone's lived through that and got to the basics of really understanding how low you can get, from my side, I wasn't worried about me. I'm a big boy. I don't care if I have a loaf of, a round of bread on Christmas Day. But for the kids, I was more upset for them, thinking, "Oh no, as dad, I've let them down. Me and mum have separated. That's bad enough on their life as it was." You get all those emotions going round in your head, and and you just have to be big enough to own it, and then the divine will look after you, and you'll come out of the other side of it. And now we tell the story, and people say, I told the story Saturday. I was at a meeting on Saturday, and we were collecting food there to hand into the local food bank. And I think we've collected about 20 bags in the last couple of days. And I don't push it anymore, but people who know that we do it, and just because we handed it over a long time ago when we closed, sort of shut the charity down, was for me to be in that position that I can know that we can just do good for people without needing anything back from it, and that's where I think the philosophy of the film Pay It Forward was amazing, because it was all about, you can't repay me. As Gary said, you can't repay me. You have to pay it forward to other people. And that was just brilliant. That really, that fits with my ethos on life,
Made me think of the film Secret Santa. I'm not sure that
Yeah.
it, but yes, it made me think of that one as well.
Absolutely.
And I think it's that learning to trust that somehow, and I think that there's something about you. This is what I'm getting at, is that there is something about you where you are able to leap and trust that the landing is going to be a soft landing somehow.
I've had a few bumpy landings along the way, but what I have learned, Anna, is that it doesn't matter how hard you hit the ground. It's about how quick you get up again.
Yes.
I'm blessed now because my partner now, she's Nigerian. She's very religious, and so from my side, I get the reminders to me that where I believe in the universe. My belief has always been that the universe will provide. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with my partner and my cousin, and my cousin's a pastor at the church. And we all stood talking, and and he always laughs, and he says, "You do realise we all believe in the same thing. Call it what you want, but you pay it what it's worth. We all believe that something greater than you or I gave us life and protects us and looks after us, and so it's interesting how you can have slightly different beliefs about the same thing."
It's I think that language can be a barrier, but I think the reason the language differs in how people perceive God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is because there's a slightly different concept attached to each of those words. So this is why some words work better for some people than others. But ultimately, you're quite right, because the shared thread, or the thread that runs through it all, is an understanding that there is a greater force, that there is something that's divine. And I think too that with that goes a sense of respect for life, all of life, and treating all of life as though it's sacred, which I think is very important. And that brings me to your ethos around farming and around food. So tell us about that.
I come from a traditional farming background, Anna. So for me, it's, right through from young, I've seen the whole transition of farming. Granddad was all about natural, organic. That was just at the tipping point where before pharmaceutical companies had kind of ruled the roost, and before chemical companies had really got into destroying the fruit and veg industry and the food industry as a whole. And then at the point where he died, I then went off to college and university to do my agricultural degree, and you soon realise that how things have changed since Granddad teaching me to me being taught by the system had changed. And, suddenly you'd got this barrier between you and what you know and what you love, and what your traditions of how you do things. And this barrier is being pushed upon all the time by the people who sponsor the universities, and and all this big corporational money in the background, where they're flooding the teachers' knowledge and flooding the education system with funding to make sure that certain agendas are pushed. And I hate to, say that as but it is that blunt, let's face it. So it soon became apparent to me that either I had to change the way I thought, which is one of the reasons I came out of the growing side of things, and I became a greengrocer, because I had such passion for the fruit and veg and the colours and the knowing this has travelled from there and this has travelled from there. And then over the years, I've kind of gone completely back on myself, and become very passionate about things like like pumpkins that are grown here in the country, about chemical free. Where we farm on Ray's farm, where we are, he's commercial farmer. He very, very kindly allowed me to have a piece of land to grow veg on. It's taken me a couple of years to break that soil down, and fortunately he'd had a couple of years where he didn't grow anything on that section, so I had time to get the chemicals and the pesticide and the nitrogens out of the ground, the unnatural nitrogen, and start to actually grow stuff on there and produce food and add compost and and get it back to what it should be. Natural seed, no MMRA, and all the removing all the nonsense what we don't need from food, and just taking it back to basics. Here's a seed given to us by someone special, and if I put it in this really nice soil which I've loved and nurtured and looked after, it's going to grow into a really healthy plant, and it's going to give me nutritional food. And my partner is really passionate about cooking, and that, so I still don't go in the kitchen. She's really passionate about all the food and all of that side, and so we work really, really well together, because I'm passionate about the bringing to the table nice fish, nice meat, nice cheese, nice vegetables, and she's passionate about cooking that to give you something really wow on the plate. So for that side, I'm blessed. I honestly know I am. But I think, unfortunately, Anna, that most people now just don't have that passion for food. They go to a supermarket and they just pick it up, chuck it in the trolley, because the packaging, they've been brainwashed to see it on the TV and hear it on the radio, and then they go through the beep and they're out the door, and they go home, throw it in the oven, they chuck it in front of the kids, and the kids go, and there's nothing. Where my kids were young, they were brought up in where their mum always cooked. She was a part Italian. She always cooked properly. Kids sat down around the table at night, not in their own bedrooms. They sat down. What was the high point of your day? What was the low point of your day? And we would go through the day of how everybody had got on, and that passion for the food and the family and the love for each other was there. And I just think that's all missing now. And I think, unfortunately, now kids have got no idea about how to find that within themselves. It's all doing this, isn't it?
I think, unfortunately, this is the next consequence of the industrialization of this country and of the West as a whole. I think we could trace this right back to people leaving the country to go into cities to work in factories. The fact of the matter is that many people just don't have the time. And I have clients who work 14, 15, and sometimes 18 hours a day. And so I spend a lot of time in actually helping them understand the importance of batch cooking on a weekend, and how a boiled egg can actually be a very nutritious snack to have during the day, or at least at breakfast time. I think this is the fundamental problem that we have. The reason convenience foods are popular is not because of any great love for them, although I think that there is an element there where some of the things that are put into them have an addictive quality.
Absolutely, 100%, yeah.
But for the most part, the average person is working extremely hard and is very tired. And when we talk about children, we need to consider that children, I have clients whose children are in school from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then come home and they're expected to do homework.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So we're doing to our children the very thing that many adults are already suffering from. So where is the time for family? Where is the time for food? And this is the fundamental issue that most people are dealing with. So it's very important that we do make things as simple as possible. And yes, I think there is a passion for food. I think there is a passion for gardening. Allotments are very popular. The problem is how to fit it in to an
Yeah.
extremely busy schedule. And I think that when I start helping people to see how they could do that, things begin to change. So it's learning to put the heart back into food, and you're certainly doing that with your wonderful farm. And I've started a community gardening project where I am.
Good
So
for you.
many of us are thinking along these lines.
Yeah,
Mine is in the embryonic stages still, but it's at least it exists and hopefully
absolutely.
will grow. You're doing something else that I'm very excited about. You have a special community shop. Tell
We
us.
do. Um, so this came about. I say Ray, whose farm it is. We are blessed to be on his, allowed on his land, really, because whilst he's a standard commercial farmer, he's very awake, and he's very much wanting to change the way he farms. So we're trying to find solutions to different things to wiggle him through that. And I said to him, I said one day, I said, you know, it would be great, as if we had a little shop in the village, because the village we live in, must be, I don't know, 1,000 people, I should guess, and no shop. And none of the neighbouring villages had a shop either. And it wasn't until you went 3 or 4 villages out, there was even a shop. So we launched. So anyway, so we had a trailer on the farm, what was a bale trailer, and it was hydraulic and it dropped completely to the floor. So Ray said, I reckon I could build a shop on that. And I said, well, that wouldn't need any planning permission then because it's on wheels. Right? So that's what we did. So Ray and one of his members of staff put together this shop, a building, a shed on, effectively a nice looking shed on wheels. And we parked it up at the farm entrance, and we grew some food this year to put in it, and we bought some food to put in it, and we've extended that now. So we've got a butchery section in there, which one of the butchers who's local to us supplies us with local meat. We've got local, just to give you an idea. So I've got a friend who runs a juice making company, and he's only a couple of villages away. We sell his juice in there. I've got a friend who produces local honey, that's in there. We've got a friend who produces local fudge, that's in there. I've got a friend who's a baker, his bread's in there. We've got local growers, farmers, producers that all bring stuff to the table locally. So suddenly, and one of the big myths which I talk a lot about is these, this green agenda, and I just get perplexed with it all. I really do. And when people say, oh, we've got to get back to, local food and natural food, I agree. The problem is there is very little of it out there now. So farmers like Ray, who have kindly allowed us to have a piece of, one field to grow vegetables on, natural vegetables, something when you eat it, you're actually, one, you're going to feel like you've eaten something tasty. 2, you're going to get something out of it with some goodness and value for your body. And 3, the other side, which will appeal to yourself, and more than anything that I find with people who come and volunteer and help on the veg beds, it's good for their mental health. And I just cannot emphasize that. To me, is the biggest reward in all of the side. We've got a young lady comes and helps us now. She's just turning 16. She's not been schooled for the last few years because she didn't fit in with the schooling system. Her parents pulled her out of school to make sure that she didn't mentally, start to slide that way. She comes. Do you know what? I've never met someone so young to have so much knowledge and passion about growing food. It's untrue. And people like that need harnessing, and the school system is never going to do that, because they've got to break you before you leave school, not encourage you. So and you see someone like that who comes to the table with the knowledge and the passion, the desire at that age, and you can nurture and help them to take it to the next step. And that to me is worth its weight in gold.
It is. And I couldn't agree more that this is an incredibly therapeutic practice, way of living. In fact, when you were speaking earlier, it made me think of a wonderful farmer that I met when I was in Cornwall a few weeks ago, staying on his farm. And he had been a dairy farmer, and I think that kind of folded at some point, in his 80s. And he was talking about farming, and he said something that absolutely struck my heart. He said, farming began to deteriorate when it stopped being a way of life and when it started to become a business, a commercial enterprise.
100% agree. 100% agree.
And that's where you're at, because you're, putting heart back into it, which is why there is this therapeutic value. And so, yes, people who I'm inviting to join my community gardening project, my hope for this is to create food security, but also to help people engage with nature again, and to reconnect with something deep inside themselves, so that there is a therapeutic value to it too. 100%. So these are the aims, as I state them clearly. This is why I dreamt this up, because I could see that it would be of benefit to people. Just so many people are suffering emotionally at the moment, and this is a fundamental aspect of it. So you've got this amazing community shop, and I think you have a future project up your sleeve.
Let's finish on the shop first. So the shop stocks quite a few items now, all locally sourced and predominantly locally. So I'll say predominantly because we do have bananas and lemons in there, and they're not. But it's unmanned as well. We just leave the community to go in and pick what they want and write in a book what they buy and to put the money in the tin. We don't have to police it. If someone realises something's wrong, they generally challenge the person, or I'll give you a classic example. The other day, I had the young lady I was talking about earlier who comes to the farm to volunteer. Her and her mum went to the shop shopping, and she said to me, "I hope you didn't mind." She said, "We spent 20 minutes in there rearranging a few things," and that's just lovely to me, because whilst I've set it up and I run it inside a CIC, it isn't mine. It's a community project. So when the community want to take ownership of it, that's just beautiful. So yes, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about Bowlerhat, the Bowlerhat Farmer Food Services, which we're about to launch. So the idea behind that came after obviously launching the shop. And a lot of people, obviously, the great thing about social media, Anna, is that, you get out to a big audience, but the audience might live anywhere. And I've got a lot. I think I've got about 28,000 followers now on social media, and an ability to get to 1 million, because I've got people like Richard Vobes and Chris Brooks and different people who run their own channels, which have got sort of anything from 50 to 250,000 followers, and I'm always on their channels as well. So I think one of the things for me was how do I get this out to the people? Because people say, "Oh, Mark, where's the shop?" And I'd say, "Here's the postcode," and they go, "Oh, you're like 350 miles away from me." So, but I didn't just want to sell anything. So it's taken us a little while to kind of work out where we're going with this, because for me, I'm about wholesome food, and that's one of the things which I'm starting to talk a lot more about in the videos which I do now, is about the quality of food. We all eat a meal and it fills you up, but do you really get anything from it? Why do we have to take vitamins? because there's no vitamins in the food anymore. Why do we have to take minerals? Because there's no minerals in the food anymore. Why do we have water filters? Because there's crap chlorine in the water now. Why do we have to buy unfluoride, toothpaste? Well, because there is crap in the blinking toothpaste. Everything we touch, feel, eat, whatever it might be, somehow, somewhere has got chemicals in it that we don't need. So for me to kind of take this online and be able to get the passion I need about it, because one thing I've been struggling with, Anna, in the last few months is I work full-time for a fruit and veg wholesale company. So my full-time job and my passion has never changed for the fruit and veg side of things. I just love the colours, the taste, the smell, the texture, the seasonal changes. I just love with passion my job. The problem I'm having with it now is it goes against every morsel of dignity inside my body, because if I know that when I talk about the myth of global warming and so forth, whilst I understand things change around the world, but for me the changes what need to come from in me, and that to me is that I feel that I need to grow more food, more seasonal food, and do I'm blessed. My partner, she's been in the position this year. She's been learning how to do chutneys and tomato sauces, and to jar things. And there's a lady called Anna I do a show with down in Wales who's just an absolute gem, and she's been on hand to give us all sorts of helps and tips and advice on that. So for me, then when I go to work and I have to sell the avocados that have come from South America, or I'm selling New Zealand lamb, for instance, or I'm selling grain that's come from the Ukraine, or what, and it's I can't mentally, I'm now struggling with my own job. So I've kind of made that decision that within the next weeks, months, I need to step away from that for my own sanity, my own belief structure, because I think that for me, I've kind of reached my point where I need to step back from that and believe in me and believe in what I believe in.
And we are all the better for it. And I think this is as we grow and as we develop and as we learn, and our inner voice gets stronger, then there's going to be periods of realignment, because the new information that we have acquired needs to kind of be worked into what we're doing. And so it is inevitable that there will be some realignment. So I absolutely love the trajectory of your journey at the moment. I find it incredibly exciting and inspiring. And I know you are extremely busy, so I am extra grateful for your time today.
It's been my pleasure. From my side, I love doing the talks because I like to be passionate about what I'm passionate about. But I think from my side, the thing to get out to people here is, stand by your beliefs. And I think that's one of the things which I'm getting more and more passionate about. For me, my passion is about the food. It's about the quality. It's about the diversity that comes throughout the year. Do we really need strawberries 365 days a year? That to me is the one kicker all the time is, people say, yeah, but I want it, I need it. And chefs especially, and that's why I'm feeling that I need to withdraw from the business, which I love, and kind of take myself down a new direction with it, and making sure that things we stop, that we actually stop on the shop, on the online shop. I say the bowlerhatfarmer.com, it's not far away now. And I think once people start to see that, you can deliver something good, wholesome, natural, that makes you feel that you belong, that you've got something after you've had a meal, and put people back in touch. And I would say to anybody at all, the one thing, if you have the ability to grow your own food, get on with it, and get on with it quick, and get the pantry stocked up, because this winter is going to be a very, very, very hard winter for a lot of people.
The joy of eating seasonally is that moment when something you haven't eaten for 6 months is suddenly available. I look forward to the first strawberries. I look forward to the chestnuts and the pumpkins.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing to have that sense of, oh, this is special because it's not here all year round. So I
Yeah.
you on that, as I am with you on many things. I've made a note of your wonderful website, and I'll be putting a link to it and your YouTube channel. So, Mark, thank you very much once again for your time today.
Anna, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. A reminder that this channel also, or In the Light Growing Your Soul, is now on 2 platforms, YouTube as well as Rumble, just to make sure that if I disappear, you know where to find me. Until next time, goodbye.